Right, so this is a suggestion via Patreon. The name of the video is 13 Things from the 1970s Kids Today Will Never Understand. Guys, this is going to be interesting. This is 16 years before I was even born, so let's check it out. Let's see how much I don't understand.
There are some things that are unique to the decade that we grew up in. The 1970s was no different, having a distinct style that is easily recognizable, even to newer generations. But aside from the obvious disco and bell-bottom trends, there were more minute details that people living during that time will easily recognize. So here are 13 things from the 1970s that kids today would never understand.
Let's go. Oh, obviously coming from the channel Recollection Road.
Options for watching TV were very different during the 1970s. For one, there were really only 3 TV channels plus public broadcasting. That's right, just 3. No streaming services, no endless options. You'd also have to get up and manually turn the dial to change channels. It was a time in which we waited for our favorite shows, which included nightly shows that were popular and Saturday morning cartoons.
Okay, so I'm guessing probably obesity was a lot less back then, most likely. All right. Everything now is remote controls. Bro, even my lights are remote controlled. Just to let you guys know. But all right, let's go.
It was a big deal when you could pour a big bowl of cereal and binge hours of your favorite animated shows. But with the limited options on the television, it's no wonder kids spent so much time outside. Well, that and the fact that some parents made their kids go outside and play.
I mean, that's a good thing, though.
During the 70s, making a mixtape was an art form. It took patience and dedication to sit by the radio for hours, waiting for the right song to be played. It didn't matter how good your timing was either, because pushing down the play and record buttons at precisely the right time still sometimes had the DJ talking over the intro. And that was just part of the charm. Cassettes had their quirks too, like when they got tangled, and you would have to use a pencil to wind them back in.
Okay, this is still my experience, guys. I mean, I remember this vividly in the early 90s. All right, so I remember this right here. Making the mixtape thing, I can see how that could be a thing, but generally we would like play the CD and then just, record onto the cassette so you could have the cassette in your Walkman.
Cassettes made it pretty easy to create what we know today as a playlist, and this was the first time we could listen anywhere we wanted. Did you ever run around the house and pretend you were Superman or Batman? Well, if you did during the 1970s, then you most likely had on a pair of superhero underoos. For many kids, they served a dual purpose. They were underwear and part of a costume when you were strutting around the house, feeling invincible. Superhero underoos were more than just clothing. They were your identity, especially the ones that matched the actual superhero outfits. Nowadays, kids can never appreciate their underwear in the same way.
That's not always a bad thing.
Recollection Road is proud to partner with Life Story Pro. Watch until the end of this video to learn more about preserving your loved one's stories in a beautifully printed book, which makes the perfect gift. Visit lifestorypro.com/recollection to get started.
All right.
During the 1970s, record stores were not just places to buy music. They were social gathering spots. Just like the mall of the 1980s, young people would hang out with friends, browse through vinyl records, and even listen to albums before they purchased them. Store employees at this time were also music enthusiasts, and they would recommend hidden gems. It also wasn't uncommon for you to strike up a conversation with a stranger who was into the same music as you.
Oh.
So the local record store was...
So you're saying that you were able to meet people, like, outside of the internet? Right? Like have regular human interactions. I mean, that's a great thing. Yeah, we definitely don't have that any longer. But me growing up in the 90s, this was a thing, kinda, right? But it was mostly like big box stores. That's where you would kind of have the music, and you generally wouldn't speak to anyone there at all, right? But
it was a special place.
But you could like listen to things on like headphones, if I recall.
And yet another experience that is hard to replicate today. Hitchhiking during the 1970s was surprisingly easy and acceptable. It was very common to see people thumbing a ride on the side of the road. Right. Drivers would often not hesitate to pick up hitchhikers, and it was seen as a way to help out a fellow traveler.
Okay.
There was more of a sense of camaraderie on the open road back then. and that's hard to understand in today's world.
Yeah, that's a no. If you put your thumb out on the side of the road, I'm driving right past you. All offense intended, okay? You're not getting in my car. I have no idea who you are. I think you're crazy, right? Potentially. Don't get me wrong. There could be people that actually seriously need a ride, but I'm just not sure I can even ever imagine doing this type of thing.
But it wasn't without risk, and there was still a chance you might encounter a few weirdos, and that was just part of the fun. Nowadays, it's illegal to hitch free rides in many places, but back then, it wasn't unusual to...
And what you're saying is, hold on guys, what you're saying is, they were dressed like this, hitchhiking. Okay.
Find a service member, a student, or even a hippie thumbing for a ride. When you think back to the 1970s, men had some serious style. They had manly mustaches, sideburns, big hair, and that distinct aroma of aftershave wafting around them. It was all about the macho look, and men took their grooming pretty seriously.
I'll be satisfied if this comes back. I'm just going to be honest. I think we need to curate, masculinity in a good way, and I do think that this would be a great idea, right? Can we bring back the overly manly men?
It was also coupled with some pretty bold choices in clothing too, and as long as you could leave a couple of buttons undone so you could show off your hairy chest, you were good to go. Nothing quite matches the swagger men had in the 1970s.
Okay. Serious question, but what if you don't have a hairy chest? Are you still manly? I'm asking for myself because I literally have no back hair or chest hair at all. Not a thing. But all right.
And speaking of grooming, ladies too had their own unique products to give them that 1970s look. Sun-In was all the rage, promising sun-kissed highlights. Women would spray it into their hair and head outside hoping for those perfect golden locks. And who doesn't remember the smell of Love's Baby Soft, a signature scent from the 1970s?
I don't remember.
The sweet, youthful fragrance was a defining smell that had all the girls wearing Baby Soft. But I'm not sure the ad campaign would fly today.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now it won't, because you basically picked like the youngest looking person in the history of people. I'm gonna go ahead and guess, and I may not even be like wrong here. This person that's in this image is like 14, all right, with these type of words around it, all right? I'm just letting you know right now. I'm sure it was a wild time back then, but this person, in fact, is like 14 years old with makeup on. All right.
When the telephone that hung in the kitchen rang, it was always answered. This was before caller ID, so people had no idea who was calling.
There would be a lot of missed calls.
Can you imagine? You didn't know if it was your best friend or a sales call, which meant there was a chance that you might recognize the voice on the other end and spend some time getting twisted up in the phone cord while you talked. Or you might be yelling across the house to let someone else know the call was for them. Today's kids might find it unbelievable that we willingly picked up the phone without the slightest clue as to who was on the other end.
Yeah, forget that. Forget that. Not even today's kids. Well, I guess that would be crazier, right? Today's kids. But like even me in the 90s? Yeah, nah, bro. We had the cordless phones and things like that, guys. That's not... that's not happening ever. I'm not picking up that phone. I don't know who you are. I will let it go to the answering machine, and I'll hear you talk, and then I'll decide if I'm going to pick it up or not.
To best capture the moments in the 1970s, you absolutely needed a Polaroid camera. The idea of hitting the button and instantly getting a picture developed was gratifying. But you had to be selective because each roll of film only had a certain number of pictures.
I still use these.
And then there was the practice of shaking the picture to help it develop faster, which was just a myth. But you couldn't take the bulky Polaroid camera with you everywhere. So there were also photo booths that were strategically placed where teenagers congregated.
I remember these
like
in a mall.
Arcades, malls, and roller rinks were ideal. So best friends and couples could capture the day with a series of goofy and fun pictures. If you were to step back in time and visit a 1970s kitchen, you'd probably find a fair share of mushroom-themed decor. Mushroom plates, mushroom curtains, mushroom wallpaper. They were everywhere.
So, like the grossest thing you can possibly put into your body, you have imagery of them.
Everything back then seemed to have an earthy aesthetic, and mushrooms must have been the perfect fungus to represent that style. I guess you'd call it charm, and every corner of the room seemed to be inspired by it.
Right.
As you waited for the weekend and that special morning of cartoons, you also needed a sugary cereal to help you enjoy it. The 1970s was all about finding the best surprise toy inside the cereal box. Kids would beg their parents for a certain brand of cereal, not because of the taste, but because of the toy. It may have been a silly game or a small figurine, but it was like finding a treasure when you dug down to the bottom of the box and...
Okay, I actively remember toys being inside of cereal boxes in the 90s. I don't know where they went at all. They're gone. Okay, they're just gone now. Maybe it was like a choking hazard. I don't know, something. I don't know.
Pulled out the prize. This excitement made morning cereal more than just breakfast, which is much different than today. Opening a beer or soda can in the 1970s was a bit different than what we are used to today. You'd pull the ring back and peel back the aluminum tab. And back then, most of the tabs were just tossed on the ground. These sharp pieces of discarded metal were a nuisance, especially on beaches or places where you might walk barefoot. These pull tabs were just another hazard that we faced, and the tops would change shortly after to the more familiar stay tab that we recognize today. But it was still all part of the fun of living in the 1970s. Last but not least, school lunch in the 1970s wasn't complete without a trusty metal lunchbox and the matching thermos. These lunchboxes not only showed off our favorite characters from pop culture, but they often also had their fair share of rust on them too. Any ding or scratch would quickly rust over, and our parents didn't seem to mind either. Remember the smell of opening a metal lunchbox after a long, hot day? Kids today, with their ice packs and insulated lunch bags, will never fully understand what it was like to grow up in the 1970s.
I mean, listen, that's actually pretty cool. I'm sure there are some of these that probably exist somewhere. I don't remember any of this, right? Like at all. I think we had like brown paper bags.
Let me know in the comments if I missed anything, and make sure to sign up for the Recollection Road newsletter using the link in the description.
All right, guys. I would say, personally, the 70s wasn't that far away from like what I know as like childhood, at least. I don't think so. I think the 70s is much closer to like my reality than the 60s were, at least. Right? The 60s, that just was like a foreign planet to me. It was here, I get it, right? I mean, right, but this doesn't feel as foreign. Hopefully there's like an 80s or like 90s video, because I want to feel some nostalgia, right? These are cool to encounter, right? But I feel kind of left out. I don't really know what these things are, right? But all right, listen, you guys all have an absolutely amazing day. Enjoy your day thoroughly.